At the beginning of Vagabond, violence is the language Musashi understands best. Growing up in a brutal environment and surviving through conflict, he sees combat as the only reliable path to meaning. Every duel feels like proof of his existence. The manga presents violence not as something glorious, but as something deeply tied to fear, insecurity, and the desire to be recognized. As Musashi moves forward, he slowly discovers that defeating others cannot answer the questions he carries within himself. What begins as a search for strength through violence gradually becomes a search for understanding beyond it. Musashi's journey is driven by an enormous ego. He wants to be known as the strongest swordsman alive, and every opponent becomes a measure of his worth. His identity depends on victory, which means every defeat feels like a threat to who he is. Vagabond explores how the ego creates endless hunger. No achievement is ever enough because there's always another challenge waiting. Through experience and hardship, Musashi begins to see that his greatest enemy is not standing across from him with a sword. It is the voice inside him that constantly demands more. Invincibility. The idea of becoming invincible sits at the center of Musashi's ambition. He imagines a future where no one can defeat him and where all doubt disappears. Yet the further he travels, the more complicated that dream becomes. He encounters opponents with different skills, different philosophies, and different understandings of life. Slowly, the meaning of invincibility changes. It stops being about physical dominance and starts becoming a question about inner peace. The manga suggests that true strength may not come from eliminating weakness, but from accepting it. Despite his reputation, Musashi is often afraid. He fears failure, insignificance, and the possibility that his life's purpose might be built on an illusion. The Vagabond treats fear as something universal rather than something that only affects the weak. The strongest warriors in the story experience it as well. What separates them is not the absence of fear but their willingness to confront it. Through Musashi's struggles, fear becomes less of an obstacle and more of a teacher that reveals what truly matters. Loneliness. As Musashi pursues greatness, he distances himself from others. Relationships become difficult because his obsession leaves little room for connection. The manga repeatedly shows how isolation can emerge from extreme ambition. While solitude helps him train and reflect, it also creates emotional distance from the people around him. Over time, Musashi realizes that understanding life requires more than understanding combat. Human connection becomes an important part of his growth, revealing dimensions of strength that cannot be learned through duels alone. Takizo. Before becoming Musashi, he is known as Takizo. This earlier identity represents raw instinct and untamed energy. Takizo acts without reflection and often allows anger to guide his decisions. The transformation from Takizo to Musashi is one of the most important psychological developments in the story. It shows how identity is not fixed but constantly shaped through experience. The manga portrays personal growth as a gradual process rather than a sudden change, with each lesson leaving its mark on the person he becomes. Matahachi serves as a powerful contrast to Musashi. While both begin their journeys together, their paths quickly separate. Matahachi often avoids hardship and searches for easier solutions, drifting from one situation to another. Through him, Vagabond explores themes of regret, self-deception, and unrealized potential. His story demonstrates that growth requires honesty. Without the courage to face reality, a person can spend years running from themselves while believing they are moving forward. Kajiro represents a different kind of strength. Unlike Musashi, he approaches life with a sense of freedom and natural expression. His relationship with swordsmanship feels less burdened by ego and ambition. Where Musashi constantly questions himself, Kajiro often moves through the world with remarkable ease. Their contrast highlights one of the manga's central questions. Is mastery achieved through relentless struggle, or can it emerge through harmony with one's nature? The story never provides a simple answer, allowing both perspectives to exist side by side. Nature. Throughout Vagabond, nature appears as more than a backdrop. Fields, forests, rivers, and changing seasons reflect the internal journeys of the characters. Musashi frequently finds clarity not in crowded towns or training halls but in moments spent observing the natural world. This reflects ideas found in Japanese philosophy and Zen traditions, where understanding often comes through direct experience rather than intellectual analysis. Nature reminds him that life is constantly changing and that resistance to change only creates suffering. Then, Zen philosophy quietly influences much of Vagabond's worldview. Rather than offering clear doctrines, it encourages awareness, presence, and direct engagement with reality. Musashi gradually learns that endless thinking often creates confusion instead of wisdom. Some of his most important insights arrive during moments of silence rather than moments of action. The manga uses these experiences to suggest that understanding cannot always be forced. Sometimes it emerges when a person stops chasing answers and begins paying attention. Growth. More than anything else, Vagabond is a story about growth. Musashi's development is not measured by the number of opponents he defeats, but by the changes in his character. He becomes more patient, more reflective, and more aware of the people around him. Each challenge strips away another illusion, bringing him closer to understanding himself. The manga presents growth as a lifelong process without a final destination. Every lesson opens the door to another question. Strength. By the end of Musashi's journey, strength no longer means what it once did. It is not fame, fear, or superiority over others. It is the ability to understand oneself honestly and live without being controlled by ego. The philosophy of Vagabond suggests that becoming strong is not about conquering the world. It is about learning how to exist within it. Through Musashi's journey, the manga transforms strength from a physical achievement into a deeply human pursuit.